Have you ever been on a long distance train before? If you're from the US or you've never been to Europe, chances are you probably haven't. But if you live near a big city, the chances are higher. So today I'm going to talk about the difference between American trains and European trains. So are you ready? Well, looks like America's first. There are some key points that I want to talk about, but first and foremost, before I go into each side, I do want to talk about the fact that there is long distance rail and inner city rail, and each country, whether you're in the US or you're in Europe, you're going to have the option to do both. So if you're traveling between countries in Europe or between states in the US, you're going to be on a long distance train. And those are what we're comparing today. Just wanted to clarify that. So first point that I want to bring up is speed. So in the US, our train systems here are a little out of date. Our train systems here just aren't as good as they are in Europe or other countries. But we are a newer country compared to a lot, so we do have that on our side, but we really haven't done much improvement on our rail systems. So speed-wise, we are kind of behind in that category when it comes to everything. We haven't really updated or kept up with the system that we do have as well as we could. I personally haven't been on a train in the US yet. I know, shame on me. What am I doing talking about it? Well, I actually have spent time working for Amtrak, which is a national train company for the US. So I did that for about 2 years. I know the system of Amtrak in and out when it comes to booking travel and what the train's capabilities and features are. So I do have that on my side. It is a goal of mine though to one day ride an American train. I have been on like inner city rails like in Chicago and some of the big cities, but I haven't been on a long distance train. It's all in my books. So my first point is speed. What are the speed of trains in the US? Well, like I said, we are kind of behind in the realm of train world and really transportation in general, but our train systems and Amtrak is the only national train company that we have in the US. The speed of regular trains in the US though average about 60 to 80 miles per hour. And in the Northeast, they have a train selection called the Acela, which is supposed to be the high speed train. And granted, it does go faster than the normal regional trains, where they advertise it where it goes up to 150 miles per hour. While that is true, it doesn't go 150 miles per hour the entire time. Let me give you an example. Between Washington, D.C. and Boston, there's only about 34 of the 457 miles that the Acela actually goes up to 150 miles per hour. So it's not really the best odds when it comes to getting you there faster. Yes, it's going to get you there faster, but not by much more. What makes the Acela so appealing is the fact that it is an upgraded experience. So really, business class and first class are the only options available for the Acela. So it's a more high-end experience of train travel compared to the regular trains that Amtrak offers, where you're going to have coach seating or business class seating available. Now let's see what Europe has in store when it comes to speed. Well, then. We are going to talk about speed. So, speed in Europe. Now, a lot of the trains in Europe can get up to 150 miles per hour, and their high-speed train system over there is way faster and more efficient than ours in the US. But they've been around longer and their infrastructure is absolutely amazing, and they have really invested in their transportation system because a lot of people utilize it over there. It is one of the main forms of transportation over there is train travel. And a lot of their trains, especially in the major countries like Germany, Spain, France, Italy, those big countries actually have a very high average of how fast their trains go. And their trains go about 100 miles per hour average, which compared to in the US, like you just heard, is a kind of a big difference when you're comparing 60 to 80 miles per hour average to 100 miles per hour average. And their trains over there also can go up to 150 miles per hour, and they have a lot more options when it comes to high-speed travel over there in many countries. Have you experienced this or experienced differences in the train systems in Europe? Comment below, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel because I would love to hear you guys' feedback, and I hope you guys will come back for more. On to the next topic. Now on to the good stuff. Price. So price in the good old USA can really vary when it comes to Amtrak. And it really just depends on where you are, when you're traveling, etc., etc. But in the good old US, we like our money, right? A lot of people like to say that our train system is really expensive when compared to Europe. And where that might be true, sometimes it can actually be cheaper to take a train than a plane, depending on the circumstance. And it really just depends on what type of travel you're doing. What I will say, there are tips to traveling on the train system in the US. One of which being the fact that our system is set up in a different way than the airlines and what we're used to. So we think of the airlines kind of just making up their own pricing or choosing which days they want to be cheaper or not. And I'm not quite sure how the airline system works specifically, but I can tell you about Amtrak. And Amtrak is completely based upon availability. So what that means is when you're booking a train trip, it is completely dependent on how full that train is at the time of purchase on how expensive it's going to be. They have different rates. They have a saver rate, they have a value rate, and they have a flexible rate. And the saver rate is going to be the absolute cheapest rate value that you will ever find on there. So it's significantly cheaper. And you're only going to be able to get that if you're 2 weeks or more before the date that you plan to leave. Now, that being said, there's only a limited availability of those tickets. So once those tickets sell out, it goes to the value rate. And there are multiple tiers within the value rate that you can get. And they're categorized in about like 4 different categories. And it goes, so as soon as the saver rate's sold out, it goes to the first level of value rate. Once those are sold out, it goes to the next one. Once those are sold out, it goes to the next one, etc., until you get to the absolute most expensive price, which is the flexible pricing. And that flexible pricing is where you're going to get 100% refunds no matter what, as long as you cancel before the train departs. Amtrak actually doesn't have bad return systems when it comes to their trains and their flexibility. So that might change due to the whole Corona thing. I don't work there anymore. But from my time and experience there, it's been really great, and their baggage policies are really great. So there are pluses to our system in the US. Now, like I said, some people do think that Amtrak is kind of expensive, and it definitely can get up there. I'm gonna be honest. Some of those room prices are absolutely crazy. Amtrak actually doesn't make a lot of money off of their train systems because it is privately owned. It's also subsidized by the government. So the government actually owns all the stocks for Amtrak. It subsidizes the system in that it gives it money each year. It's part of our budget. So your tax-paying dollars are going towards that rail system. But only about 7% of what they make is from that subsidization. So it's not a huge amount. And it's really, because they're not turning profit on a lot of their train systems, they're not really able to invest it into the train systems themselves, which is unfortunate. But what can you do? Hopefully it gets better. Infrastructure is a big thing in the US, and hopefully we start to invest in it a little bit more so that our train systems can be a little bit more comparable to those in Europe. Our transportation system in general in the US is pretty expensive. Just how much it costs to fly from one state to the next is kind of ridiculous. Hopefully we can get past that one day, because in Europe, if you haven't seen my video on transportation in Europe, I'll link it up here somewhere. Go check that out. It's a great tool to see how much they offer for transportation in Europe. One thing I do want to mention is Amtrak does have a pass called the USA Rail Pass, and it's sort of comparable to the U-Rail pass that's available in Europe, which I'll talk about in a second. It is a great pass. It's not as complex, and there's only 3 options, but I'm gonna go over those now. As you can see, there's 3 different segments that they allot for the USA Rail Pass. There's a 15 days, 30 days, and 45 days. Now, you can travel only a limited amount of time during these days. So in the 15-day category, 8 segments would mean every single time that you get off the train. So if you're going from New York to Chicago, that's one segment. And then if you go Chicago to Los Angeles, that's another segment. So every time you get off the train and onto another train, whether it's a connection or not, that counts as a segment. So that can be a little bit limiting in regards to that. And, it really just depends on how long you're traveling for. You can go under the amount of days, but you can't go over. So if there are 12 segments that you have for the 30-day mark, and so if you do that within 20 days, that's fine. There's no penalty, obviously, for that. But you just want to be cognizant that they are depicted based on each train that you get on and off of. It also can include bus segments as well. So if there's a connecting bus, that counts for a segment on your trip. I don't know really why they include the youth pricing on here, but I do want to pay attention to the fact that their children policy is any child under 2 is free. And their youth is only from ages 13 to 15, but in regards to that, it's no difference in price. It's not too bad. It's definitely valuable if you want to have flexible travel. This is a great way to travel around the US on a pass. All right, so let's hear it from the European side. Oh, here I am. Affordability of trains in Europe is pretty great. Europe is known for its affordable systems and transportation all around Europe. It's a very accessible way to get around Europe in general. They have a lot more options when it comes to their rail passes. So Eurail is a pass that was created and it works between all of these countries. So really, when I like to think of Europe, I think of their countries comparable to our states. Some of their countries are comparable to some of our states in size. So think of it like that. And the EU works very well together. And so they created the Eurail Pass. And the Eurail Pass is a great tool to be able to get around Europe and all of these different countries, really depending on what your train travel is. So they have a lot more options than the standard 3 that the US has. So let's get into those really quick so that you guys can get a visual perspective of what they offer. The first thing I want to point out is you can notice right away on the top row there is youth pricing, and that youth pricing actually covers those who are between the ages of 12 and 27. So in Europe, they really try to help the youth out and try and give discounts to young adults in general to encourage them to travel, which I think is absolutely amazing. And then you can see the pricing for an adult, which is anyone age 28 and above. So there is a significant discount that you get for that, and it's honestly pretty awesome how they do that to encourage their youth to travel, in my opinion. I do want to go over how it's structured because, as you can see, it is different than the US is structured. As you see, their most popular is 5 days within 1 month, and that is going to cover 5 days worth of train travel, no matter how many trains you're on and off in that day. So you get 5 days within 1 month to travel and use those as your travel days. So you can go on 4 different trains in that one day as long as it's in the same 24-hour span of a day, which I believe gives you a lot of bang for your buck, honestly. And then you can do the 4 days within 1 month, etc. They have a lot of options, so I am going to go through those different ones so you can see them. Here you can see it goes up gradually. So you can see there's 7 days within 1 month, 10 days within 2 months, and 15 days within 2 months. So it'll really just depend on how many places you plan to go in the time that you are somewhere. It just depends on your travel plans. If you're really on a mission, you can see here you can purchase 15 days in a month, 22 days in a month, or just a full month of free reign if you plan to travel every day. These ones you have 2 months and 3 months available if you are backpacking and you're really trying to see as many places as possible. This is for you. And I do want to highlight the fact that obviously their youth pricing is way better than the US, but also their children policy is. So children under 4 are free without a pass, and children between the ages of 4 and 11 are free, but they must have a pass and be traveling with someone who has an adult ticket. And that's
2 children for each adult is applicable. So that's pretty great. I'm just saying. It's definitely a plus for any parents out there and will save you some money in the long run.
Now, I do want to mention that some trains in Europe, when you're traveling long distance, are going to require you to have a reservation. Now, what does that mean? Having a reservation on one of those trains, when you have your URail pass, your URail pass will cover the basics of you being able to be on that train. But a reservation actually guarantees you a seat. And these are really required for high-speed trains and some of the newer trains in Europe. If you're on a budget and you want to save money, the slower trains and the regional trains are usually not going to require a reservation, so you can always go that route. But in case some of the times work out better for you on those high-speed rail trains, just keep in mind that a reservation might be needed. It ranges only about 10 to 20 euros, which isn't bad. And yeah, you're probably thinking, oh, well, you already paid for the URail ticket. Why would you have to pay more for a reservation? Well, those trains can fill up really quickly, and there are people who are buying individual tickets to be on that train. While you have a URail pass, you are entitled to be on that train, but if you just go on that train and you have your URail pass, and let's say they don't require reservations, but they advise that you get a reservation, let's say that train becomes full, you're gonna end up being the first one to get kicked off. So that would kind of suck, because that might throw your plans down the tube for that day. So like I said, some of those are going to suggest a reservation, or it might require a reservation so that they make sure that they are going to have enough seats for everybody on that train. Honestly, for the peace of mind that it gives you to make sure that you're going to be able to be on that train, it's not that bad. 10 to 20 euros really just depends on the train that you're going on. Why don't we go to the next point? My third point is accessibility. So how easy is it to get from state to state or country to country? Well, from state to state in the US, I'm gonna show you a map so that I can go over it a little bit better with a visual aid for you, because we don't go everywhere in the US, unfortunately. But it is what it is. Hopefully one day we'll expand our railways. So here's that map.
So let me explain what you're looking at right now. So this is a map of Amtrak's national train lines, and the red lines indicate the rail lines that go throughout the US where they have active trains going through. Then there is the green lines, and those give you the Amtrak bus connections that you can take from those Amtrak stations to other connecting cities. And they did that because we do not have a very robust railway system that doesn't get everywhere. So they did need to be able to get people to certain popular areas. So as you can see, a lot of the Midwest is excluded in this train travel. And another thing is, as you can see, Chicago is a hub. There's a few hubs around the US. Washington, D.C. is one. New Orleans is one, Chicago is one, Los Angeles is another. And these hubs connect a lot of different things. But what's really important to know is that of these, so from Chicago, you can see there's 4 main railways that kind of bring you out west. And of these 4 railways, these trains a lot of times only leave once a day. So either you're getting on that train the time, whatever time that might be, whether it's 2 o'clock in the morning, whenever it's passing through that city each night or each day, you have to get on at that time. So there's zero flexibility on when you need to get onto the train, which is inconvenient. And we don't have the powerful system like Europe where they have multiple trains going out of different places each day. So that is a downfall, that, you know, those places are only going to be leaving once a day, but it is what it is. As you can see, there's a lot more train rail lines in the Northeast, but everywhere else it's kind of sparse. And honestly, it's not the worst system ever. There are some beautiful routes that you can take, like along the west coast of the US, along the northern route, and you can also take some routes through the Rocky Mountains. It's absolutely gorgeous, some of these routes.
I hope that visual helped you. Now let's hear it from Europe. By the way, guys, I just want to say, I know I don't really look that French. It's okay. This is what I had, so Sorry. So accessibility in Europe is, again, I've said it before, their transportation system is amazing. You can get to 33 countries just with the U-Rail pass. Even not using the U-Rail pass, you're gonna be able to get to other countries that aren't partnered with the U-Rail, because they have their own train systems too. So it really just depends on where you're going. If you're going to any of the major countries in Europe, the U-Rail pass will have you covered. It's honestly an amazing system just in general. Now I'm going to show you the European rail lines map so you guys can get a better idea of what that map looks like compared to our US map.
So as you can see, their rail map is a lot more extensive than the US rail map. You can get to a lot of other places. It's very connected, and this doesn't even include the inner city rail lines that they have. So it's a very connected system. It's amazing. And I highly recommend utilizing the system over in Europe. This is not just the U-Rail lines, this is actually other lines included as well. So this is an overview of the major train lines in Europe.
So guys, I hope you guys found this helpful. Those top 3 points, speed, price, and accessibility, I felt were the top 3 things to go over in comparison with American trains and European trains. Honestly, if you've never been on a train, it is an amazing opportunity to be able to see where you're actually going. I absolutely love trains in every regard, and I think that it's a great way to see where you're traveling to. It's a different atmosphere than you're gonna get from a plane or anything like that, because you're gonna be less crowded. You have the ability to be able to move and get up and go around, and you're also able to see exactly where you're going out the window. When you're in a plane, it's really cool. You get to go up in the air, but then you're just looking at clouds the majority of the time if it's during the day, and then when you come down, like, you're seeing the aerial view of everything. But it's really cool to see some of the countryside that you're going through when you're traveling on trains. So I do highly recommend going on trains. Of course, there's pros and cons, but if you have the time to be able to go on a train, highly recommend. If you haven't already, please subscribe below. I would love your support. It really truly does help me when you guys subscribe. And if you guys have video ideas that you guys want to hear about, comment below. Tell me. I would love to hear from you guys and hear what you want to learn about Europe in general or traveling in general. I'm here to help you guys. So with that, I hope you guys have an amazing rest of your week, and I will see you again next week. Bye.